Hey geographers, this is Miss V and you're watching APHG with Miss V. So today we're going to continue population and migration in this unit, but we're going into a new topic talking about how populations grow and how they decline. Alright, so these are more measures, okay? Infant mortality rate is the number of infant deaths per 1,000 live births before the age of 1. Okay, and again, healthcare of a society, especially the status of women, reflect on the infant mortality rate being whether it's high or it's low. Okay, child mortality rates are the number of children that die between the ages of 1 and 5 per 1,000, and the life expectancy is the average number of years to be lived by a person, and the highest life expectancy rates are in Japan, and the lowest are in sub-Saharan Africa. Okay, and also in Europe they have a high life expectancy rate. Why? Because of the same thing we've been mentioning: access to education, access to healthcare, access to a great workforce, and that allows them to be able to pay for the things that they need, so that they need to be able to live a longer life. Okay, all right. So the total fertility rate is the predicted number of births a woman will have as she passes through her reproductive time period. Now, the TFR of 2.1 is usually considered the replacement level. So that means that basically parents on average will basically have 2.1 kids. Which is the number of children needed to replace them. Okay, so they're saying that 2.1 kids is about the number needed to replace those two parents, right? Okay, now the number is not a whole number because some women and some men choose not to have children, whether they're married or not. Or couples are not, they choose not to have children even though they may be childbearing age, or also they may not be able to have children whether if they're childbearing age. Okay, now this replacement level of 2.1 with the fertility rates, that can lead to zero population growth. So what this means is that because the replacement level is low, then that could lead to a region having a stagnant population, meaning that there's no births going on. The birth rate is pretty much on level with the death rate, or even to the point where there's more deaths than births because there's more elderly population than there is a young population. Okay, so a lot of countries or regions may be concerned about that. Okay. All right, so let's compare the maps again. Here we have the United States, and this is their infant mortality rate compared to the world and the world's infant mortality rate. So in the United States, what area or what region has the highest infant mortality rate? Tell me in the EdPuzzle. All right, so if you said parts of southern United States, which is especially Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, you're absolutely correct. Those have a higher infant mortality rate, and it could be possible that the infant mortality rate is higher here because a lot of those people may not have access to great schools or education, or they may not be able to afford afford a good doctor, right, to be able to have babies, or they might not have a good job, a high-paying job, or may not be able to access work whatsoever so that they can pay for a doctor. Okay, so that can lend itself to having a high mortality rate, infant mortality rate. Okay, whereas here in Washington and Massachusetts, the infant mortality rate is much lower, meaning that people are able to access the healthcare needed so that they can have their babies, right? So again, it all depends on political, social, and economic issues. Same thing here. Which one has the highest infant mortality rate? Tell me in the comments or in your EdPuzzle. All right, so if you said Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, then you're absolutely right. Those areas have a high infant mortality rate, which goes again to what we've been talking about before with the political, social, and economic structures. If those are in place, then more than likely they are MDCs that give adequate health care and give adequate education to women and have adequate work for women. But if they don't, then they end up having a lot of children, high birth rates, but also high infant mortality rates because those children are not getting the adequate resources and the nutrients that they need in order to survive. Okay. All right. So this is the world's TFR, the total fertility rate, which is below the replacement level. Now, if you remember back on the previous slide, we looked at the infant mortality rates, and there's pretty much the United States. If you look back here, the United States had a pretty fair low number in terms of infant mortality rates, right? However, if we look at this, which countries has a total fertility rate that is below the replacement level? All right, so the infant mortality rate here, the total fertility rate here that is below the replacement level, we see here we have Anglo-America, which is Canada, United States, right? And also Europe, Western and Eastern Europe, and also Australia, right? So those regions or countries are experiencing a lower replacement level. So that means that the people that there's probably maybe just one or no kids that are replacing the parents. Based on that, in terms of, even though the United States has a lower infant mortality rate, meaning that when a child is born, they survive. However, people in the United States and Australia and Europe are not having that many kids in the first place. So that again presents a question of a lot of areas, especially Europe, questioning how they can either boost their population, or if they need to, or if they want to. In this case, for certain countries in Europe, they want to. They want to start boosting their population. And we'll talk more about those types of ways that countries use the government to boost population growth. Okay. Life expectancy at birth is same thing that's contributed. Think about the political, social, and economic issues. Okay. So which countries here have a high life expectancy, and why? Why do they have a high life expectancy? All right. So hopefully you have some ideas about why and which ones. So if you saw in that map, basically a lot of the same MDCs that we talked about, the United States, Canada, Australia, a lot of those places had a high life expectancy, which comes back again to our political, social, and economic infrastructures to help them stay fit and stay healthy and stay alive, right, for a longer period of time. So thoughts and questions. I'm sure that you probably have a lot of thoughts and questions around this, but one question that I do want to pose to you to think about and offer your thoughts on is, how do you think birth and death rates affect the population and the success of a society? Do you think the death rates and the birth rates are significant to understanding how successful a society would be? Talk about it, think about it, put it in the chat, put it in the EdPuzzle, and I look forward to reading each and every one of your comments and your thoughts and questions, and I will see you soon on the next video.